There are only a few weeks left until we hear
Good morning. Welcome to Apple Park.
And Tim Cook will present the new iPhone 17 lineup in his usual manner. The good news is that we already know everything there is to know about these new iPhones, or at least almost everything, because I've been reporting on the latest rumors and leaks on my German channel for months and would now like to give you a complete overview of what the iPhone 17 lineup can do. So let's get started. A quick note for anyone who's new here, feel free to subscribe to the channel for free and you will always be informed when there's news about Apple. But now let's get into the video. First things first, the iPhone 16 lineup currently consists of 4 models, namely the iPhone 16, iPhone 16 Plus, 16 Pro and the iPhone 16 Pro Max. However, this will not remain the case with the iPhone 17 lineup, as Apple will probably drop the Plus model and replace it with an Air model. This Air model will not simply be a larger version of the standard iPhone like the Plus, but will be completely new and separate model. The iPhone 17 lineup will then look like this: iPhone 17, iPhone 17 Air, iPhone 17 Pro, and now here's the kicker. According to some rumors, the Pro Max model will also be replaced by the iPhone 17 Ultra. While the rumors about the iPhone 17 Air are quite reliable, the Ultra is still up in the air and we may well end up with an iPhone 17 Pro Max. Let's start with the iPhone 17, as this is likely to be the most unspectacular, but probably also the phone that will hold the price and therefore make sense for many people. At least visually it will be unspectacular according to the latest rumors, as we will most likely get exactly the same design as the iPhone 16. So 2 vertically arranged cameras on the back and the dynamic island on the front. However, 2 things will change on the case and the display. Firstly, the size, as the iPhone 17 is expected to have a 6.3-inch display. The iPhone 16 had a 6.1-inch display. The second visual change will be the colors. White and black will be available as usual, but there will probably also be a light blue, a green, a purple and a steel gray. If the leaked colors are correct, the colorful models in particular will be quite bright and not quite as garish as the current iPhone 16 colors. A third possible but rather unlikely visual change to the iPhone 17 could be a smaller dynamic island. Technically, Apple would be probably able to install the front camera and sensors in a more space-saving way, but it remains to be seen whether they will do so and whether this will also be the case for the standard iPhone 17. But while we are on the subject of the dynamic island and the front camera, we also have to talk about the resolution. This is set to increase from 12 megapixels to 24 megapixels for the front camera. That would definitely be a decent upgrade, but as things stand, it's also the only camera improvement on the iPhone 17. So there won't be much change to the ultra wide angle camera and the standard camera on the back, although I'm sure Apple will come up with something, even if it's just a new marketing term. However, the highlight of the iPhone 17 will definitely be the display. First of all, an OLED panel is to be installed, which is 30% brighter and more durable. The display panel from the current iPhone 16 Pro could be passed down to the iPhone 17, which would then account for the approximately 30%, but that is not the highlight. Hold on to your heads, the iPhone 17 is to get promotion. 120 Hz on a standard iPhone. Can you imagine that? That we'll get to experience that? There are, of course, 2 scenarios possible. One is LTPO 1 to 120 Hz, which would also make always-on display technically possible, or pure 120 Hz without LTPO, which would not allow always on. In any case, I'll believe it when I see it. But that is basically it in terms of major changes. On top of that, there will be the A19 chip, which is supposed to be a little faster, more efficient. There's also supposed to be an Apple-owned Wi-Fi chip that is also supposed to be more efficient, and 25 watts of wireless charging with third-party hardware may also be available, but I don't think that will happen. I suspect Apple will remain at 35 watts wired and wireless as we know it right now. The whole thing is supposed to be available at the same price as the iPhone 16, starting at $949. However, the trend is upward and there are definitely voices calling for a price increase. $999 for the iPhone 17 would therefore be also conceivable, but quite steep. Nevertheless, I have to say, if the price isn't increased too drastically and the battery in the iPhone 17 does a good job, then you'll get a really good overall package. I mean, the iPhone 16 was already strong, but it had a major weakness in the form of its lack of 120 Hz, which will now probably be fixed. So if you're currently eyeing up the iPhone 16, you might want to wait another month or two. I'll say it now, I think the iPhone 17 Air will be the star of the show. For one thing, it's the first time in a long time that Apple has introduced a completely new iPhone line. And for another, the iPhone 17 Air is supposed to be the thinnest iPhone ever. Apple has already shown that it can make thin devices with the iPad Pro, which is just 5.1 millimeters thick. According to the rumors, the iPhone 17 Air will be somewhere between 5 and 6 millimeters. Just for the comparison, the thinnest iPhone ever is the iPhone 6 at 6.9 millimeters and the current iPhone 16 is 7.8 millimeters thick, so this would definitely be a lot thinner. However, thinner devices also come with a number of well-known problems. We already are familiar with one of these from the iPhone 6, namely that it bends more easily. However, there are rumors that Apple will use a lot of titanium in the iPhone 17 Air to counteract this, as titanium is more robust than aluminum. Although it is slightly heavier, it is still light enough that the iPhone 17 Air is expected to weigh only about 145 grams, which is comparable to the iPhone 13 mini and the iPhone SE 2, although these have a much smaller form factor and a much smaller display. There will likely be 4 color options. First, classic white and black, plus a light gold and a soft blue, as we know it from the current MacBook Air. And when we look at the concept, the back naturally catches the eye. A thick camera bar with only one single camera, and no, that is not a mistake. The iPhone 17 Air will probably only have a single 48 megapixel camera, namely the current main camera from the iPhone 16 Pro. At least it will also get the 24 megapixel front camera. Of course, we don't know for sure, but the fact that we're only getting one camera certainly has something to do with the fact that there's very little space in the phone. At least there are no nasty surprises when it comes to the display. At 6.6 inches, it will actually be larger than the standard iPhone 17. And it also expected to feature 120 Hz and a 30% brighter OLED panel. For me, this definitely raises the question of the battery. How is a battery in such a thin device supposed to power such a powerful display for hours on end? Apple has probably asked itself the same question because there are a few battery optimizations in the iPhone 17 Air. For example, Apple's own C1 modem for 5G reception will be installed, which is supposed to be more efficient. The processor is also said to be optimized for efficiency. However, it is still unclear whether it will be the A19 as in the iPhone 17 or a slimmed down A19 Pro. Either way, battery life will suffer and be noticeably worse than on the other models. A leak mentions a very thin battery, approximately 2.49 millimeters, which suggests 3000 milliampere hours. There are also rumors that Apple is planning a battery case for the Air at the same time as compensation for the bad battery. The leaked renderings show a slightly offset USB-C port and fewer speaker openings. Whether this will actually be the case is unclear, but with a 145 gram iPhone, there will probably be a few compromises, such as no SIM card slot, only eSIM support. The price of the iPhone 17 Air is currently unclear. The iPhone 16 Plus currently starts at $1,099, so that would be probably the minimum price we can expect. However, since we have to expect a price increase of 50 euros, and Apple certainly will charge for a premium for the thinnest iPhone ever, it could also be significantly more expensive. On the other hand, I'm very excited about a thin, elegant iPhone, but on the other hand, I'm also a little bit afraid that the compromises in terms of camera and battery will ruin the whole experience. I hope it doesn't turn out to be like with the iPhone 13 mini, a device that you really want to love but can't because the battery is always dead. That brings us to the iPhone 17 Pro and the Pro Max. As already mentioned, the 17 Pro Max could become the iPhone 17 Ultra, but as things stand, we don't know of any features that will only be available on the larger model, so we will go through both models together. In terms of size, little is likely to change for either model, so they will remain at 6.3 and 6.9 inches, but maybe slightly thicker. The design looks different because there are some major changes planned. First, there will be a thick camera bar on the back. The cameras themselves are still arranged in a triangle, but the highlight extends across the entire width, and the flash and LiDAR sensor are located on the far right of this bar. Apple is also expected to switch back from titanium to aluminum. The back will also not be made entirely of glass, as has been the case up to now. Instead, the lower section will be glass so that wireless charging can continue to work, but the rest of the back will be aluminum. So it will be a combination of an aluminum frame with a glass back at the bottom and aluminum at the top. With all these changes, the Apple logo will also move further down so that it remains centered on the back. However, this could mean that it would be covered by the MagSafe ring on transparent cases, which means that MagSafe cases could have a recess in the MagSafe ring in the future, so they are not covering up the great Apple logo. As you can see, there's a lot going on in terms of design. I wouldn't be surprised if we look at this iPhone 16 Pro at some point in the future and think, wow, the iPhone used to be so clean and so simple. In terms of colors, the models will be available in black, silver, gray, dark blue and an orange shade. There are also rumors about a color that looks a little bit like liquid glass. However, this doesn't necessarily have to be a separate color. It's conceivable that the white shade will be slightly shimmering and brighter than before. As is often the case, it's the cameras that make the Pro, and this year we're getting a few upgrades. First, of course, there's a 24 megapixel front camera, but there is also a 48 megapixel telephoto camera. This would mean that all the three cameras on the back would be 48 megapixel. There is even a talk of an 8x zoom instead of a 5x zoom, which could make sense as the thicker camera bar on the back would give Apple more space for the periscope technology and better zoom. In any case, Apple will also be stepping up its game when it comes to video. On the one hand, it is possible that we will get 8K video, and on the other hand, it should be possible to record on two cameras at the same time. For example, the front and the rear cameras could be used simultaneously. Sounds fantastic, but clearly just a rumor at this stage, and there are no strong indications that this will really happen. As for the chip, we can expect the A19 Pro chip in the iPhone 17 Pro and 12 GB of RAM instead of the previous 8 GB. There will also be a better cooling system, which will ensure that the chip needs to be throttled less often due to heat. In everyday use, this will probably make little difference, but my iPhone gets hot quickly even at 4K, so this is probably a very sensible step for features such as 8K video. Another absolutely fantastic improvement is said to be the battery. With 5000 mAh, the iPhone 17 Pro Max will have the largest battery ever in an iPhone. There will probably be fewer changes to the Pro, but we could see reverse wireless charging on both models. This would allow you to charge your AirPods on the back of your phone. Apple has apparently tested the feature, but we'll have to wait and see if they actually include it. While it's still unclear for the standard iPhone 17, rumors are relatively certain that we'll see a price increase of around $50 for all other models. Whether these prices will actually be implemented remains uncertain, as the situation with tariffs and other factors is constantly changing. What do you think? Would it be worth the price for you? Let me know in the comments. That is all from me today. Thank you for watching and see you hopefully in one of the next videos in English here on my new channel.
Son, you gotta go, reach a little higher. It's time to get serious. Experience will take you from a boy